Let's get started. My name is Melissa Zuro. I am the marketing director at WhereScape and welcoming you to our webinar with Data Vault on Learn How to Become a Productive Data Superhero. Today, you're going to learn how to streamline data management, boost productivity, transfer your data team into organizational superheroes. And I'd like to introduce our speakers. First up is Neil Strange, the CEO of Data Vault. He has over 40 years of experience in the industry, has founded Data Vault, which is a specialist data engineering, governance, and analytics consultancy with a focus on the Data Vault method. And WhereScape Senior Solutions Architect, Paul Watson-Gover, who has over 15 years of experience. He excels in environments that emphasize continuous learning, innovation, value process-oriented solutions that drive success. Before we get started, I wanted to cover some housekeeping items. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see a QA icon. Feel free to drop in any questions throughout the session. We'll have time at the end of the session to answer any questions. With that being said, let's dive into our session. Neil, you can get started.
I'll take over from here. Thank you very much. Let's move on. Just to be clear, today we have a short period of time. We have about 50 minutes to get through a topic, and we wanted to show you really two aspects of the productivity equation. The first of which is how Data Vault itself underpins and supports productive ways of working. And then with the tool, from the tool side, Paul will be able to demonstrate to you how the tool supports the Data Vault method, how that will accelerate your work patterns. So if you're interested in the technology aspects, Paul will be along shortly. Otherwise, I'll cover off the more theoretical stuff about how Data Vault is and how it fits together. Objectives of today, really, I'd love it if you could leave with an understanding of the benefits that Data Vault can bring for you in a modern data architecture. And understand that actually the Data Vault method and WhereScape do fit together seamlessly. And we have used WhereScape tooling on a number of our projects, and very successfully too. Not just seamlessly, but they actually unlock benefits for you on your data projects. And then finally, sort of seeing why do we get a productivity multiplier effect. It's not just a small increment in your productivity, it's a significant boost or bonus to your productivity. So understand how WhereScape can help you, not just initially on your project, but can follow you and adapt as you improve your ways of working. So really, without further ado, we've got 5 topics to cover off. We've had an introduction. I'll talk about Data Vault and how does it deliver productivity gains. Paul will do a demonstration of the toolkit and show you how that works, and then we'll have a wash-up Q&A session as well at the end, and hopefully we'll have a lot of interested individuals here. There is a learning path beyond this, so this is just an introduction, so we'll provide you with some links to other resources that you might want to access to understand more about this space, and you are always welcome to field questions or deal with you offline if you want to ask us questions that might be more confidential or more detailed for you. So issues. Now, what is it that's getting in the way of productivity inside our BI teams? You know, after all, the software engineers are off building these small systems. They are working on software as a service performance inside the applications that are being built, but far too often the BI team, the data analytics team, seems to be left behind with older platforms and issues around the ways of working and architectures being used that make them less and less oriented around serving the business. And common things we hear when we talk to our clients are complaints about BI just being too slow. You know, you put requests in, there's a 2-year waiting list for new initiatives. Pipelines keep getting broken. Seems to be a lot going on there, but no actual tangible things coming out of the team. And example I have here is some of our clients, they're still working with a non-agile mentality here. They have separate teams for business analysis, for development, and for testing. And they put the business analysts in, they do their work, they hand over requirements to the developers who then hand over their work to the testers to get things done. And there's none of this sort of small team, fast focus, fail fast approach to work. So I had one client where actually the developers worked ahead of the business analysts. So the developers built what they thought the customer needed. Business analysis was just to clarify some of the rules that were in there. And then they just handed over the code to the testers to work on, saying, can you please test this? And the testers were saying, well, test against what? And they said, oh, no, don't worry about it. Just test the code we've given you. Tell us if it's working all right. And then we'll push that out for deployment. And guess what? They ended up with lots of rework because the developers didn't understand what the business needed and weren't iterating fast enough on this delivery. So we are looking at new ways of working. We have to put in multidisciplinary teams, often very small squads, focused on small incremental delivery inside this space. And that allows us the ability to deliver these productivity gains. There's a big skills problem in the market at the moment. A lot of my clients are having trouble finding staff to work with the right skill sets. And particularly in the States, have quite high salaries coming through for data engineers. So we've got a sort of a demand and supply problem here. Particularly if you're working as well in the older patterns, you need quite large teams to do delivery. So you're constantly looking for people. People are walking out on you, taking knowledge with them. With the best will in the world, you can't document a system thoroughly. So you end up with issues of gaps in knowledge and understanding of the business and the context of that. And the other problem we often see as well is that a lot of our clients have data warehouses that have evolved over time, and they put layers and layers of technology on there and not removed it. So we still have clients with Visual Basic, for example, Visual Basic ETL utilities or various drag and drop tools that are no longer on the marketplace, and expecting their staff to be interested in maintaining those, so locking their skills into old technologies, but also not benefiting from the benefits and bonuses of more productive tooling. The thing with Data Vault is if you put a Data Vault project in place, you'll end up with smaller teams. So we typically see in clients teams, squads of about 4 or 5 engineers working together on a Data Vault project, bringing their various skills. So you'll still have a business analyst, a developer, and a tester in the mix, but they work together and interchangeably on the same issue, the same problem, and work on delivering a result to customers. Now, if you do this, you end up with skill sharing, more motivated individuals, and a need to recruit fewer people. The other thing that we want to possibly put in here as well is that Data Vault is a standard. So you can get training in Data Vault, and if you go and visit different Data Vault implementations, you'll see a lot of features in common. You'll see the hubs and links and satellites in these destinations, these locations. So it's possible to hire people in who are trained and qualified in Data Vault, who should recognize what it is they're working with. So again, a way of ensuring that people are productive as soon as you can join your team. I was talking to a potential customer about 3 weeks ago, and the data engineers said, our customer says we need to use AI. We have to produce an AI application. And I asked them, well, what do you want it to do? And they said, well, the users said they didn't know what they wanted to do with AI, but could they think up something, please, and just deliver it so that they could say that they were working with AI? And I said, well, how's your data quality? Not very good, they said. Okay, so we back to garbage in, garbage out here, trying to invent applications without an idea what you want to do, and not having done the basics first, which is to have a good quality data pipeline in place to feed your machine learning and generative AI applications. And Data Vault does that behind the scenes thing. It works on ensuring that your data pipeline is of good quality, that the data you feed to your learning applications is appropriate appropriate for learning. I'll give you an example here, a very simple one, but you can probably see how this will throw things out. I had one customer, they had a very, very old system they were feeding data from. And this system was so old that it didn't even have a field to record a customer's email. Email hadn't really been invented back then, but they did have a field for the fax number. So what they did was they had a set of data in there where they did put in the fax numbers. And then at one point they decided, let's be clever and let's multi-use this column and start to put emails in to the fax number column. Okay. And they ended up with a really big problem downstream because they wanted to do customer matching on their emails. But when they queried the email column, they kept getting back these phone numbers and fax numbers in there. And they had to put all kinds of logic in there to do cleanup and to split the columns apart to prepare the data for feed and for matching purposes. So it's a simple one, relatively trivial thing to solve. But if you start overlaying lots and lots of these things in the data quality area, then you're going to end up with really quite some problems with maintenance and quality on the AI that you're applying here. So Data Vault's really good at doing this, preparing integrated, semantically clean data for feeding these applications. Okay, why do we need data modeling? Some clients I work with say, I don't have any data modelers in my team. Their job is to code. Data modeling is a waste of time. Now, I'm not necessarily sure I agree with that. The reason for that is that as your system scales up and you get larger and larger data sets to work with, you'll find working off tabular lists of tables and column names quite difficult to grasp. And a good quality data model allows you to see like a two-dimensional version of the data and how it's laid out and the relationships between the various tables that are there. So data modeling is an important skill to have. And I've seen customers get lost in the volume of the ETL and tables that they need without this sort of technique to allow them to map it out and manage it better. And good data modeling as well allows you to get this semantic integration, which is so important to feed your artificial intelligence and machine learning applications. Okay, so that's just a sort of idea of the sort of issues I see today out there, and we really need to start addressing them if we're going to be building out a new data platform. Now, Data Vault is not the only method out there for building a platform, but I think it offers quite a lot of good things in terms of what people are looking for today from a modern data platform. So on the right-hand side of this slide here, I've sort of written down lists of things that our customers ask for in terms of how they want to work today. They want to work at very large-scale data sets. They want to handle different types of batch and real-time feeds. They want to address data quality. They need agility and ways of working. They need very strong audit trails in the data so they can prove where data came from and show the working of how they've come up with answers. They need to be able to scale to work with very large data volumes and so on. So quite a lot of things that people are looking for. And Data Vault's pretty good at addressing most of these areas, which makes it a good candidate for a future architecture. And if you're going to ask for a definition of Data Vault, this is my definition. I call it really a framework for data warehousing. It's not a method. It doesn't give you lists of tasks and deliverables, for example, but it does give you an idea of the architecture you need to put in place and some ideas about your ways of working and the sort of SQL you might need to run to load your data. But it does give you the underpinnings for scalability, flexibility, and auditability, which I think are absolutely critical in any modern data platform. So as I say, Data Vault really is a good candidate for your future data platform needs, and it fits well with your data mesh ideas as well. So if you're familiar with data mesh talks about federating your data sets out across a number of different teams, and then bringing the data together later for data exchange and for analytic purposes. And Data Vault can fit well within each data domain, by modeling a point-in-time view of the data in there for reporting from. But Data Vault can also be used for the integration necessary to get the reporting working cross-domain and data sharing that you need to put in place in the governance layer. So it plays very well with your data mesh ideas. Far too much in there in terms of the detail of how that works, but I'll be happy to talk about that if anyone wants to learn any more. In terms of Data Vault itself, it's got four things we can talk about. It's got three core principles. So it's designed to be scalable, it's designed to be flexible, and it's designed to be auditable. There's a bit more behind that, but those are, I think, are the key thrust of Data Vault, what it's trying to do. And if you can apply those principles, you get all these benefits out. So the ability to report on historical data. So if you're into bitemporal data or working out what you knew when, Data Vault will give you this historical view of your data and allow you to build time series analysis in there. It's excellent at data integration. So if you have lots of data sets coming in that need to be joined up, they can do that for you. It allows you to be agile in supporting the business. So as the business twists and turns and reacts to the environment it's in, you can keep up with it in terms of the analytics you produce. It provides this audit trail, which allows you to give you regulatory compliance. It also helps you improve on your data quality and federation of your data. In terms of the features, well, it's high on automation through standards, which Paul will demonstrate to you. It does integration at scale, and it's optimized for performance at scale as well. So it has a belief that you are working with large data sets in there, and it's model driven. So that means we're using metadata to do your project work. And finally, you'll be happy to know it's got a familiar layer-based architecture, and in there are these hubs, links, and satellites, which are a critical part of Data Vault itself. Right, so in terms of productivity gains, we have, as always with gains, how much productivity can we gain by using Data Vault with an appropriate tool? And the answer is it depends. It depends on how free you are to make changes in your working practices. And also it depends on the tooling that you're using and the target platform that you're working towards. But what we've seen is reduction in team size. So a lot of our clients reduce the teams to squads of between 3 and 5 individuals, and productivity gains. So an individual typically is gaining around 500% or more of productivity. We've had this a number of times where I'm fairly confident that's a good average productivity gain. If you want to learn a lot more about Data Vault, then there are some books out there. So there's the Bible there, the Building a Scalable Data Warehouse, Data Vault 2. That goes back to 2015 when that was released, but it's a very, very good introduction to Data Vault, sort of open sources the method. And a more recent book, Data Vault Guru by Patrick Kuber, who is a Snowflake employee now, focused on Snowflake in there, covering off a lot of the latest developments in Data Vault, and together they complement the information that you need to learn more about the method. And if you want to, we actually offer a free training class every fortnight. It's a 2-hour session. We do core concepts where we go into some depth about how Data Vault works. There's a scan at the bottom there if you want to scan that QR code. And basically, if you want to book your place in there, we'll spend time there going in a bit more depth about the mechanics of Data Vault and how it works. So really recommend it. We've been doing that for a few years and get good results or good marks for it. Okay, so productivity gains. So how do we enable productivity to improve? So the first thing is we have automation. So we generate much of the SQL that you need to use to build your data warehouse. So all this repetitive work that you used to do, writing ETL packages, is simplified. It boils it down to sort of model-driven model-driven ETL, and you're able to generate the volume of ETL necessary to run your data warehouse. And that's possible because Data Vault has these patterns, the hubs, links, and satellites in there. You can do refactoring. Now, If you're working in an old-fashioned architecture, you'll find that you sometimes sit there and worry for quite a while about whether a design decision was right or wrong. With Data Vault, your consequences of mistakes are quite low, so you can experiment. You can go down one route and try it out. If it doesn't work, you can reverse back out and try an alternative route, or even build two routes together and see which one works best and compare them against each other. This has been very useful and saved our bacon on a number of occasions on a project where we can just make progress and deliver results to end users. It also supports incremental development, so you can build your data warehouse out a slice at a time, thin slice at a time, have data available in deployment for people to use, your end users to use, and then you add to it over time, little bit at a time, through your iterative approach. And it sort of builds together like a jigsaw, so it gives you a chance for an early benefit release. And finally, supporting federation. So there are techniques out there to build your federated models, data warehouses, and to bring them together through point-in-time data patterns to give you some very rich reporting, integrated reporting out the far end. And one last point is that Data Vault is there for modern work patterns. So it's largely about modeling, managing metadata rather than code, writing things by hand. Okay, so over to you, Paul. Take over for this point.
Okay, thanks, Neil.
You're welcome.
So yes, after that summary there from Neil, thanks very much. We'll move into seeing what this looks like with the WhereScape toolset. As you see on this slide, it's effectively a workbench that enables you to bring some automation to this whole process. We have two tools. We have WhereScape 3D, which actually stands for data-driven design, and we have WhereScape Red, which actually handles the building of the objects in the underlying database. So 3D works entirely in metadata. Then what we do is we take that metadata we've generated, we push it across to Red. Red then pushes that down into the target database to have those objects and flows built actually natively on the target. So let's swap to my screen. Okay. Can someone confirm that you can see the screen okay? I'm going to assume that you can then. Hopefully you're all seeing this architecture slide.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Thanks, Neil. This just gives an idea of where we operate with our tool sets. We are a data warehouse automation tool, and that is all we are. We operate within and including the red boxes, trying to bring automation wherever practical to these parts of the data warehouse. Obviously, this particular one is focused around Data Vault, as you see on the diagram here, but we also support any other modeling style that you may wish to embark on. You could even make up your own and we'd be able to support that. So underpinning all of that is metadata. And what this gives us is the ability then to produce automated documentation, to provide lineage and impact analysis and those kinds of things out of the box. Okay, let's jump into 3D because particularly in a Data Vault context, this is where you are likely to start. Because I don't want to jump in and out of the tools into PowerPoint, I think we've all seen enough PowerPoint today. I used 3D to mock up a sort of slide that shows the cycle. Sorry, I couldn't quite get the arrows right, but you know, it was good enough. So the process we're going to go through is we'll start with a logical design. Then from there, we can connect to some sources. We then need to map those sources onto our logical design. We would then do some configuration work. The amount of configuration that's required really depends on your appetite for changing the way that the software works. 3D is highly configurable when it comes to this stuff. You have to be careful not to get stuck down a rabbit hole when you're doing this, but it's very important to make sure that you get the model out that you desire at the end of the process. Once your configurations are set up, you can then go back to your logical design and start tagging up your attributes and entities. You can run some conversions to see what your design looks like. So do a bit of testing and review of the design. And once you're happy, you deploy it to the database and you go around again. So let's see what that looks like in practice. I will start over here on the left then with this data vault design category. This is effectively the logical design. If I add a new design and I call this, I'll call it a demo version 1. The first thing I have is an empty model here. Now, let's, obviously there is a step before this, which is we've done some analysis with the business and we understand what the business actually need. So that's kind of a given. Here I'm focusing on the implementation part. So let's go ahead and add a new entity, and pretty much everyone has customers. So let's say there's a customer entity. Now this on its own, doesn't really give me much at all. Because we are working towards a data vault design, we know that we need a business key. So at this point, I could come into attributes and I could add a customer business key. Now, one of the things about 3D is that if I wanted to follow this method in a particular way, I could in fact configure a table type that would automatically add a business key. I just haven't done for the purposes of this demo. I can assign this an attribute type of business key or a tag. I can say, okay, and now I have this customer entity with a business key. Now, it's nothing more than metadata, as I've already mentioned. So we can say, you know what, I've completed my first step. I've done a logical design. Now what I need to do then is think about my sources and start mapping them on. Now, I'm not going to show you how to create connections and connect to your sources. I've already done that and created some source models. The source that I'm using is the TPCH source. It's not complicated. Of course, it's not. It's quite simple, but it's fine for illustration purposes. So we can see that in this particular TPCH database, there is a customer table, thankfully. So I can use that to do some mapping. Multiple ways to do this. I can turn on the source mapping functionality with this button over here, and then I can drag and drop from the left onto the diagram. I can go into this entity and I can start to add sources this way instead. And there we can see the only thing that I get doing it this way initially is an entity level mapping. I do need to know what my business key is. So let's just say, and yes, I know this is bad practice for any of you practitioners out there, but I'm going to drag the C cust key and call that my business key. Just so that we've got another attribute, I will drag on this C name column so that I have the customer name as an additional attribute, which I can now come back to here and I can tag that up, ready to go into a satellite. Now, that's essentially the process. I would repeat that process. I might add a link in there, some more hubs, etc. As we can see, that process of tagging those attributes has resulted in these colored boxes. That just tells me that these attributes have been tagged, and so I know that they will result in a correct model when I run my conversions. So let's go back to our process. We're connected to a source. So we'll say that one's done. And I've mapped a source onto my logical design. So we'll say that one's done. Now, configurations. I'm not going to go into these in too much depth because it's a massive topic for 3D. You know, that could cover an entire webinar on its own. But there are kind of two key parts to the configurations. If I go into the settings here, we have the types or tags or whatever you want to call them. At entity level, we have entity types, and at the attribute level, we have attribute types. These are key building blocks of the conversion process, which is handled via the model conversions. Now, model conversions do exactly what they say. You take a model of one type, we apply some rules to it, and we transform it into a different type of model. We do provide, as you can see here, these generate data vault and create your staging models. These are provided out of the box, but you also have the ability to create your own additional rules to do whatever you would like to do. So once you understand that and know that if you need to make any configurations, you can say those are done. And we've already done the tagging. I've sort of jumped ahead a bit there. And I'm now ready to start generating and reviewing my models from my design. So if we start with this demo design, when I click on it here, it enables some workflows over here, one of which is generate data vault. So I'll say, yes, generate me a new data vault, please. We'll call this one version 1 as well. I'm not going to talk through all of these because we have masses of time, but there are lots of options here that I could change that would affect the naming conventions that are used. These are the conversions that have been configured and will be applied when we get to this point here. Now that was all very quick because it was obviously one source entity, so not a lot of metadata to be generated, but you can see lots and lots of info there, some feedback about what was done to a lot of them. There's not links for every rule, but nearly all of them have a link to tell you what went on in the background. If I hit finish and display that diagram, we can see the net result is I've ended up with a hub because I had a business key and an attribute tagged as business key, and I've got a satellite because I said, hey, I have this attribute and I want it to go into a satellite. So that's what I've got. Now, if I'm happy with that, I could then go to the next stage, which would be to generate some additional objects for landing the data and staging it, and then finally through to an export model that I could export to red. So I'm happy with this, but let's say actually I've got more than one source of customer information. So let's go back and make a change. Now, if I come back to my process diagram, we can say, yep, I've reviewed, I'm happy, let's go. Now at this point, I don't actually want to deploy it to the database right now. I want to go back round this cycle to make a change to it. So what I will do now is map an additional source onto this object, just to show that process. So if I come back into this logical entity, I'll go to the source mappings and say that I want to add a new source entity. Oh, no, sorry, I won't do that. I'll do this first. I'll add a new source mapping set. So this one we will do America, let's say, because I know I have a source for America. I will go back to the source models. Find the table, click add. So the C name column has been automatically mapped because it's the same name, but the business key hasn't. So I will just quickly map that one and click apply. And now if I trace this entity back, trace its source, we can see it's got two sources. And now what I can also do from this design is generate data vault again. So I'll put it into that same demo DV, but it's a new version. And we'll just go next, next, next. And now we can see that what we've ended up with is still just one hub. So this is now one multi-sourced hub, as it should be, but two satellites, one for each data source. So that is essentially the process. Now, there is a lot more to it if you get back into a bigger, more complex data vault project, but that is essentially the process. So let's look at that model expanded out a little bit. I'll get rid of this funny PowerPoint replacement now. So let's look at that for the entire source mapped out. Now I've taken a bit of artistic license here in that I've just quickly created this model. It does basically represent the source model. That shouldn't be the case, but I have done it just for this this purpose. But I essentially now I've got more tables, more attributes. They've all been tagged up. You can see some additional colored boxes on here to represent different things. If I generate this data vault now, and call it number 3. You can see it takes a few seconds longer because there's a bit more metadata. But what we end up with now is more objects generated from that same process. Well, to take that another step further, you can see I've already pre-built some with additional mappings. So this one, you can see at this level, it looks exactly the same. It's still 5 tables, but you can see that each of them now has 3 sources mapped to it. So what happens if I run exactly the same thing with this one? Well, it shouldn't be a surprise to know that I end up with a data vault model again, and that it might just take a few more seconds to run because there's a little bit more metadata. And if we display this diagram, we can see it's now got a little bigger, mostly because there's additional satellites. Obviously, the hubs and links are now multi-sourced, but our 5-table source diagram has now been turned into a 24-table model. And that's just one use of the conversions, is to convert some kind of model into some other kind of model. You can also run conversions directly on an existing model. So for example, let's say I wanted to do something basic like some grouping of objects, and I can base that on a set of patterns or a set of rules. Then I can right click on here and just say apply model conversion. And in here I have a set of rules to group my objects just into a logical grouping that I think I need. And now if I just display that group, I can just see what we would call, and most people would call, a spine diagram of the data vault. So this is just the hubs and the links. It doesn't mean the satellites are gone. They still exist in that version of the model. It just means they're not in this particular group. So this is one way that I can use to logically display different sections of my model. And that was just to really highlight the fact that model conversions aren't just for going from one category to another. Okay, let's close all these down so I don't have too many open. Next step is to take my 24-table model and generate some staging objects. So it's the same process again. I choose my model, I create load and staging. Actually, I'm going to put this into a new model called demo ls for load and staging, and hit next. Now there were less windows this time because there aren't sort of specific things that need to be configured to generate this type of model. This should just take a few seconds. Apparently running zoom and 3D slows down my machine. There we go. So now if we look at the overview, we can see it's a little busier again because we now have some load objects, which in this case are actually views, and we have some staging objects that handle the generation of the hash keys that are required for the satellites and the hubs and the links. So now then what's happened is that 24 table data vault model has become a 57 table load and staging model. So one final step, let's get this ready to send over to Red. So if I call this my demo Red model, version 1. Now I know it looks like there's a lot of clicking here, and that is deliberate on my part. Once you've worked out this whole process and got it working the way that you are happy with, you can actually configure a workflow button over here to go from this design all the way down to the Red design, and in fact even deploy it to Red all in one go. I'm just walking you through the steps in essentially an iteration 0 type of approach. So now I've got everything I need to deploy this to the physically on the database. So I can now export this model to Red. So the first thing it does is builds a deployment file. I then need to decide which Red repository it's being deployed to. I log in. I'll get a preview. I didn't actually mean to deploy the whole model. Hold on one second. I may have just broken my system. Let me try that again. What I should have highlighted is that I already have a partially built model in Red, and what I actually want to do is just deploy the new objects, which are not there. Damn. Okay, so this is an example of where I haven't configured my rules correctly. Which I really don't want to change now. Okay, let's just export the whole model. The curse of the live demo. I see there is a question. What direct data visualization tools might work best with this infrastructure? Okay, I assume you are referring to a reporting tool once you've built your warehouse. The answer, if I could just go back to the diagram here, is any. All we're doing here is building a data warehouse on a database. It's not a WhereScape data warehouse. There's no WhereScape code. There are no WhereScape objects. In fact, if my machine stops playing up and actually does the deployment, we'll see that it's actually on Snowflake that I'm building here. We support a range of different target databases. Snowflake is just one of them. The historically, from when I started using WhereScape, however many years ago that was now, about 17 years ago, we only supported SQL Server, Oracle, DB2, and Teradata. Now we support all of the modern, both cloud and on-prem databases, including the likes of Databricks, Snowflake, as I've already mentioned. We also can support Postgres and various others. Right, the deployment isn't working, but luckily I have already got some stuff pre-built here. I hope that answers the question, Paul. So as we can see, if I browse my Snowflake connection, I do already have objects sitting in Snowflake that I deployed earlier. And what I also have, as I already mentioned, is some lineage. I built this object earlier just to show a bit of diagramming. So once I've deployed everything, we can see that obviously the metadata that we've captured means that we always know where objects came from. So you didn't see me build this object, but I built it earlier. But you can see that it knows where it came from. If I then need to schedule this or via the orchestration tool, I can do it from this diagram. It's not necessarily the way you would do it, but we can see that what it does is it takes that lineage and generates a job, which I can now see there. In this latest version of the Red software, we have integrated the Azkaban scheduler. So if you're not familiar with that, it was originally developed by LinkedIn. It's kind of similar to Airflow in the way that it looks and feels. And I think I've clicked on the wrong thing. There we go. So there you can see the workflow. Apparently not in a very good resolution. That would be executed if I was to start this job. And what that would then be doing is telling Snowflake to grab some data into this table. Then once it's finished this one, run this process. And then ultimately, when all of these dependent steps are finished, you can process this object. And it would support all the things you would expect, restarting on failure, notifications, all that kind of stuff that you'd expect from an orchestration tool. You also don't have to use that necessarily. We are able to integrate with other orchestration tools. So what I've shown you there is obviously very high level. We've kept it to very simple raw vault principles just to get through a quick demo. There is a lot more to it. And obviously, if you want to know more, please do get in touch and we can certainly organize a deeper dive and go into a lot more detail. Neil, back to you.
Wonderful, thank you very much. I think we're done apart from any questions that people have. So we've got some in the chat here. Let's have a look and see. So we have, so how does WhereScape's automation tool enhance the implementation of the data vault methodology? What specific features help in reducing project timelines? I think the thing where we've used it in my business for projects, it's the ability to customize the templates. So it's very easy to do that, and we were very pleased when support for Python came in as well. So we're able to really generate Python code and extend out quite considerably the functionality that you can generate from the tool. But I think also the other thing is the ability to partition the data set up into smaller parts and go through that cycle that Paul showed you. So pick a few source tables, go around the loop very quickly and generate, and then move on. Paul, don't know whether you've had the similar experience with clients on this. And I think also, sorry, to add, the other thing is it's a one workbench, so you're able to have several teams working together off of the same source data sets so that they coordinate better. Paul, over to you.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Neil. There's not really much to add to that.
Okay. So in terms of data vault methodology, I mean, actually, as far as WhereScape is concerned, data vault's just another pattern for building data warehouses. So this is where its strength comes in, because very often with data vaults, we build a Kimball-like consumption layer, presentation layer. So you're able to put the Kimball type generation functionality into the WhereScape tool and have it just generate and flow out as a natural design feature. And then where clients have added their own various specialities or particular preferences, it was able to configure the tool to work their way. So I think that's also says how useful and how flexible the tool is.
Yep. That's the key for me, actually, Neil. There are many tools out there that do similar things, but as you saw during that brief demo, you have the ability to alter that and kind of interfere in that process. It's not a black box. I refer to it as a configurable black box. You're building your own black box, or taking ours and making it work, twiddling some knobs to make it work slightly differently, which ultimately seems to be what most customers want. Even in a data vault context where there are standards, often customers just want it slightly differently to the standards, or maybe there's even if it's just a particular technical column that they always add to their data warehouse builds, you can easily configure that with the WhereScape software.
I think we've got the final question here, which is about a case study. So I'll briefly mention one. I have a client that has essentially they needed to migrate from one source system to another and maintain the reporting that went out the far end. So if you can imagine, we have an organization, they have some statutory reporting they've got to do, and a lot of that reporting comes out of an operational system that they're using. And then they had to bring in a brand new operational system. They wanted to use the warehouse to migrate data from old to new. So we built a presentation layer to feed converted data through to the new platform. But also when the new platform started on day one, we wanted to switch off the old system and switch on the new system and have reporting running as if there had been no change in the underlying platform. And we wouldn't have achieved that without the productivity we got out of WhereScape, because a lot of the migration was sort of formula based. So once we got the mapping together in terms of this column in the new system looks like this column in the old system, and so on, we're able to capture that into the WhereScape tool and use that metadata to generate the migration scripts, as well as generate new satellites to put the new system in and generate out the far end. But not only that, but to generate the documentation as well, which kept the auditors very happy in terms of what data do we load, where did it come from, what do we know about it, what profiling can we talk about the data. And we succeeded. Obviously, a day zero cutover with live data is not ideal, but we did succeed with minimal interruption on the client's reporting, and they were very happy about that. So yes, we were able to use WhereScape to do a lot of that, and customizing the scripts was very important to allow us to do that migration.
We have someone with a hand up.
Was that Reese, I think it was?
Yeah.
Can you type in your question?
Or we can allow to talk.
we can allow you to talk.
Let's try that. Reese, did you wish to?
Reese is muted. If you could unmute Reese.
No.
No.
No. Oh well, never mind.
Maybe you clicked it by accident.
Yeah, never mind. Okay, all right. I don't think we have any further questions. I think we're on time anyway. So we'd like to say thank you very much for everyone for attending. This is a very short session. So I recommend if your sort of interest is piqued on this, then please do reach out and come along to one of our 2-hour sessions. I'm sure that Paul will be very happy to demonstrate the tool further for you if you've got questions or you want to do a sort of trial run with your own data sets. I know that WhereScape does work with clients in that space as well to show what the tool's capable of. Yeah, be delighted to see you there. And we'll see you around hopefully as part of the Data Vault community. Thank you very much.